This is an issue about the safety of what's known as a hybrid fuel cell based upon natural gas. Never been built in the state before, and to our knowledge, not in the nation. There may only be one in North America, and that has a very short shelf life so far, so we haven't seen the safety consequences of it. But you need to keep in mind that we may not be speaking about fuel cells in general, or that all fuel cells need a heightened level of scrutiny, but certainly these hybrid natural gas powered fuel cells need it. This is in a beautiful residential area. It's really the soft underbelly of suburbia, and is entirely inappropriate. We're asking that the siting council be given additional tools when evaluating a proposal such as this. Right now, the siting council, when they're looking at this type of petition, can only determine whether or not it has an adverse, substantial adverse negative effect on the area. Well, it ought to be expanded. It certainly ought to include public safety. It ought to include a voice for local control. It ought to include public hearings. It ought to include public notice. And none of that is in the
for me, it's really an important consideration that even though it's not specifically in my district, it is a town issue. And I think for all of us, it's a critical factor not only in the town that I represent, but also to a number of other residential communities throughout the state, particularly when we're looking at new energy resources, new power plants. It's a delicate balance between residential needs and quality of life and public safety to our need to find resources, find energy resources to supplement our need. What we're trying to do in this legislation language is to give them more tools in their toolbox to evaluate the issues as it relates to when they're putting up power plants, such as fuel cells, that they should consider public safety, particularly in light of what happened in the clean energy plant in Middletown. Public safety is something that is important for not only the company that is putting that in there, but also...
Rowe touched on, I think, some of the key elements of what I think the General Assembly needs to consider in acting on this legislation and future legislation as the need arises. It's about public safety, it's about public notice, it's about public hearings, it's about public participation. And the way that the law is currently written, in my opinion, provides not enough opportunity for the public to be properly informed, to allow for public hearings where people can testify, be heard, and quite frankly, had we not taken the initiative as a community to raise our objections to this proposed application, the applicant had indicated their intent to file for a declaratory rule.
Although our fight today is born out of what's happening in Trumbull right now as a community, and we've had support from over 40 towns throughout Connecticut so far in the roughly week and a half we've been organized to do something, that this is really about, you know, the lack of public transparency around what you can build 150 feet away from a residential home, and citing you know, electrical power generators on 50-year-old high-pressure gas lines is probably something we should have a bit more.
It's concerning that currently, as legislation and law stands, that the people do not have a say when something like this is proposed in their neighborhoods. So I do thank our legislative team. I'm looking forward to testifying. And just to note, a number of us residents are here wearing this fragile sign simply to make note that communities are fragile and that we must be handled with care.